Tonight's speakers, Jack Armstrong and Joe Getty, are star performance of San Francisco's KNEW radio station. And according to the website I Hate the Media, their show features lots of listener calls with social commentary and humor. In fact, they call it the day-to-day wonder and silliness of life, love, kids, pets, work, play, and the parade of goofy behavior that is the news headlines. They caused a stir on September 24th when they were commenting on how this was after the Benghazi event and this horrible film that was the source of all this upheaval. They commented on how radical Muslims tend to threaten anyone who disrespects Islam. So during the discussion, they suggested people create YouTube videos, cartoons, and websites disrespectful of Muhammad until radical Muslims grow up. Needless to say, this idea caused controversy. And for the next 2 days, the station aired the best of Armstrong and Getty. And there was a flurry of comments with respect to the change in life returned to normal 2 days later. Jack is married, father of 2 boys, likes reading and watching everything that exists about everything. Joe and his wife have 3 kids, and he has a band, Joe Getty and the Dead Flowers. He also comes up with some great conservative slogans for t-shirts, mugs, coffee mugs, and bumper stickers. One that I like says, "Want more stuff? Work more." What a concept. And his stuff, I take it, is available for sale.
I am a capitalist.
Okay, absolutely. Free markets. It's available at cafepress.com/conserva stuff. Tonight, they're going to tell us how to survive another 4 years of Obama. So please join me in welcoming Jack Armstrong and Joe.
Thanks, Howard. Hi, I'm Cliff Fiscal, and this is Steve Questration. Hey, Jerry, those pants aren't conservative by any means. Those pants voted for McGovern, I can tell by looking at them. Those are not Barry Goldwater pants. But thank you. How to survive the Obama years. Obviously, I've decided to disguise myself as a bear and to melt into the forest. Another month or so of not shaving and not getting haircuts, and I'll be able to run around on all fours and snatch salmon out of streams and not have to listen to the media anymore, which will probably double my lifespan. These are challenging times. Too loud? Is there somebody in charge of the volume? I mean, I could just speak very quietly, but my delivery is kind of my thing. I'm a lot louder than he is, so yeah, we can turn it down. Check 1, 2. Given my druthers, I'd like to talk it about this volume. Sorry if that was painful. Can we get an idea of how many people have heard the Armstrong and Getty show so we know? Don't lie, okay. You don't have to lie. I just want to know if you kind of know our thing or don't know our thing. And if you do know our thing, because I can get really cynical about all this, like really depressing, like really, why don't we just give up and go drink or something like that. So I'm going to try to avoid that tonight. We'll end up with a mass suicide and do a Jonestown thing here. That would not be, especially for the Christmas party. That would be inappropriate at best. Whoa! By the way, I don't appreciate little. What was that God stuff with the Pledge of Allegiance? Several people said Merry Christmas, and somebody said illegal immigrants, which I don't like either. So you've offended me on several levels already. Yes, and that is one of our major themes this evening, recapturing the verbiage of the debate, because we've done a miserable job, we conservatives and arguably our party, in defining what the debate is. But before we get into that, just to know, we are going to have a question and answer, question discussion if you want at some point. So if you want to noodle through some questions, we will answer them with disarming, probably inadvisable honesty. And if we aren't willing to answer them honestly, we'll tell you exactly why. That's kind of our thing. For those of you who have not heard the show, we'd rather be right than happy. And we bite the hand that feeds us so regularly. They come to see us with one of those "I'm trading a police dog" outfits, you know, with the padding and the gloves. So, the verbiage of the debate has been so miserably mishandled, it's astounding to us. One of the reasons we're so cynical is because, you know, our alleged champions, again, arguably in the Republican Party, I can barely even squeeze that out, have done so little to advance the argument for freedom and free enterprise and traditional and successful American values. That's the most discouraging part. I mean, a loss in an election, you know, a miserable slaughter in the California election, supermajorities for the people who've run the state into the ground. I mean, it's just astounding, but we can live through it compared to the folks who had to deal with, you know, the rise of Nazi Germany and communist Russia, you know, the soldiers at Valley Forge, you know, guys in 1862. Who the hell are we to complain, honestly, as Americans? Okay?
Yeah, I wasn't alive then, so what am I supposed to do?
Toughen up!
I can't go in a time machine. These are the times I live in, and they're starting to suck.
Right. But they do, and one of the problems, I think, is, again, the verbiage of the thing. Like, for instance, I remember, gosh, this may have even come up when McCain was running, but it certainly came up this time where Barack Obama said, you know, I'm here to give you everything you need, and fairness, blah, 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 with a word which we'll come to in a moment. But he said, and of course, Mitt Romney's version of America is you're on your own. He defined freedom as you're on your own, as a negative, and the response was, oh, we believe in something or other. He let him get away with it. What a beautiful moment. I loathe cliches, but it's a teachable moment. Yeah, you're on your, yeah, I know, I'm sorry. We keep each other honest. You're on your own, except for your spouse, your family, and your church, and or synagogue or mosque, we're very inclusive, and your town, and your county, and your state, and the local charitable organizations, and people who, when they hear you're in need, will step forward because we're the most generous people on earth. Other than that, we're on our own. And the counter-argument to we're on our own, which was not disputed, is therefore the federal government must do everything for all people, which is enormously dangerous in terms of freedom and enormously expensive, as you know.
Yeah, it's astounding to me that the conservative side of things is losing this argument. I mean, I get Democrats doing what they're doing and saying what they're saying. They believe that stuff, and that's fine, they get to. They believe in giving people more stuff, and everybody who's down and out, just, you know, somebody did something to them because that's not their own fault. They believe all that stuff. But I don't get the sense that there is another party that believes in conservatism. Why is that? I don't know. It drives me absolutely crazy. Like the example Joe gave. I was watching the Sunday talk shows a couple of weeks ago, and the Democrat on there was talking about, there's no problem with Social Security. That money's been set aside and paid for. And the Republican counterpart didn't even point out, it's already been spent. It got spent years ago. He didn't even say anything. Nobody stands up for the other side of the argument. So you got Gallup. They do surveys and show 2-to-1 people consider themselves conservative over liberal. Huge margin, people say they want smaller government than less services. But nobody's standing up for that point of view. And I can't exactly figure out why that is. That's what's so depressing to me.
You know, I think part of it has to do with a phenomenon we're all experienced with, and that's media bias. We've all grown up with a certain narrative, and for the percentage of the populace, which is very large, that doesn't really pay attention and has only a vague idea of what's going on, that's the narrative that they've accepted. And so we absolutely have a sales challenge. I know we've got a lot of entrepreneurs here, a lot of business people, small and large. We do have a sales challenge. because they've bought this lie, really.
Do you mean entrepreneurs that might make more than $250,000 a year as a household? In other words, millionaires and billionaires who are not paying their fair share? Is that what you're talking about?
Wait a second, whoa.
Or as I heard them describe on MSNBC this morning, people who make more than $250,000 a year, half of small businesses are that, by the way, extremely wealthy. Extremely wealthy? Really?
Well, and if so, so what? But Jack, brilliantly, he's a clever man. He threw out another one of those little verbal dodges that went unchallenged. All of a sudden, we went from families in any part of the country, by the way, from rural Kansas, where we both spent time, rural Illinois, to the Bay Area, families that make $250,000. And then all of a sudden, it was millionaires and billionaires. Well, wait a second, that's a hellacious leap. I don't know about y'all's, but you got to make a fair amount of money to make your house payment around here. And so we let that go, and it seems petty. Look, I'm an argumentative guy. That's why I'm a talk show host. It's one of the reasons. And they just pay us really well. But so I'm nitpicky, so that bothers me. But it's also so important because if you let those battles go unfought, all of a sudden you're struggling under the weight of all of this biased verbiage and being asked, why are you against fairness? And you've got to go back 3 steps and point out, well, you defined fairness as the epitome of unfairness. Taking my stuff and giving it to them without my permission at the point of a gun. What could be less fair than that? But you gotta hit it when it comes out of their mouth.
Oh, there's so many examples. I do not understand why the conservative side loses the argument. For instance, on illegal immigration, you're going to have an immigration panel, I guess, coming up soon. I looked this up again on Gallup, just so I have the actual specific, and you can look all this stuff up there. I don't know why anybody that's in a presidential debate, for instance, doesn't look this up and use this information, but it's available. 53% of Americans say the government this year should stop illegal immigration, basically seal our borders against illegal immigration. Say that's an extremely important issue, 53%. So you add another 29% that say it's very important, and you're at 82%. 82% of Americans say it's very or extremely important to seal our border this year. And if you even say the word illegal immigration in a debate, you get shouted down by the incredibly unfair media as some sort of racist, some sort of backward thinking. How can the vast majority of Americans agree with the idea of stopping illegal immigration, and we have no politicians willing to stand up and do anything about it? How could that possibly be? I mean, it makes no sense to me whatsoever. That is a winning issue. No matter where you are in the country, you come out against illegal immigration and you're going to win. Nobody has the guts to do it. Why? I have no idea.
Which returns us to a couple of things. Number one, the value of gatherings like this and the comparing of notes and thoughts among all of you and like-minded people, the Tea Party movement and all its various incarnations. It's important. I've got 2 daughters. One's 13, one's just turned 20. And so, women's safety is an issue that I take very seriously. And I came across a study that was absolutely fascinating. And one of the things they realized was that women are often victimized because they fear to give offense. They do not want to offend somebody by coldly rejecting an offer of whatever, whether it's a ride, a walk, somebody comes up to you in the dark, and it's not instinctive for human beings, and it's not just women, because men do the same thing, are often victimized in similar different ways. We don't want to give offense. It's a very strong human need. We're pack animals, we're hive animals. So that's cool. And I think we all kind of, until especially the Tea Party movement got started, we got the idea that we were legitimately giving offense to people by expressing our views. And as Jack points out, the reality illegal immigration could not be more starkly different than the perceived reality you would get from the mainstream media. I mean, it's really astounding. 82%? I mean, you ought to be able to walk into any meeting, bar, restaurant, school, anywhere in America and say, we got to seal the borders this year. And everybody would go, damn right! Yeah. Except for a tiny little minority rather, in the corner. How exactly did we become that tiny little minority afraid to speak out? So, back to the theme of not getting discouraged. Talk to each other, stay with each other, come to the meetings, and don't be discouraged, and go ahead and give a little offense.
Everybody's gonna be fine.
Do you remember that whole speech that leaked out that Mitt Romney said the 47% and all that sort of stuff? I actually thought that should have been his convention speech as opposed to something that leaked out that was so offensive and everything like that. But another graph, I'm a big fan of graphs. Around the time I was born in the 60s, about 6% of people didn't pay any federal income tax. Now, as we all know, it's almost 50%. Now, how can you argue that that's a good thing? I mean, how can you argue that that change has got to be positive? And even if you do think it's positive, where do you think it ought to stop? It's going one direction. It's growing quite quickly. Will it be cool when 60% don't pay income tax? When 75%? What's the proper number of people to not pay federal income tax? How can we not have, how does this discussion not be had during a presidential election? I mean, you can really only blame the candidate for not forcing the issue, I guess.
And his professional acts.
And it's tough because it is true, and I hate to complain about the bias of the media. It's just tiring, but it is true and it's there. And the vast majority of the media looks at the world in a certain way. But how are these things never brought up? That's a massive change in the way we've structured society. The number of people that have skin in the game, that are actually paying into the tax system versus the number of people that are taking. And that's why the cynical me says, once you're at 50%, there are more people taken than given, you've crossed some sort of line, you're never going back. I mean, I don't see how you're ever going to fix it when you got more people taken than given and more people saying, heck yeah, I'm going to vote for the guy that gives me more.
I'd rather die prematurely of an anger-driven stroke and be right, though. This probably share that with a lot of people in the room. So, back to the point of who pays income taxes and balancing the budget on the backs of the middle class, etc. Did you hear one time during the presidential election anybody state, if everyone is paying some federal income tax, even if it's tiny, everyone will pay attention, they will hold the government to account, and they will make the government respond to themselves as citizens? That's all you need to say. I came up with that off the top of my head right now. I just wanted to check. I don't have any consultants. We've got to recapture the debate. When Jack was talking about the election and the strategies and all, I think a lot of us here have probably worked for corporations, speaking of biting the hand that feeds us, that chase quarterly or even monthly profits or stock prices or stuff like that. And a lot of us have seen them sacrifice good, wise, long-term stewardship for chasing that immediate gain. And, you do that in your life, obviously. You're going to ruin your relationship, your life. It's true for a company. And it's also true for a political philosophy. These guys, these pros, are so intent on getting the morons to vote this time around. And by the way, my theory is that most people are stupid. I realize that sounds cynical and terrible and elitist, but I will stand by it without fear of contradiction.
You stand around the Walmart for an afternoon. What conclusion are you going to come to?
Stupid's a little uncharitable. Why don't we say too busy to really pay attention?
They're called low information voters. That's the way we go.
That's, is anybody offended by strong language? Are there any kids here?
No.
Because we're not on the radio. There's no FCC here. So, I briefly I had that part about too busy to be informed. I briefly had my arm twisted to get into politics, and that's the sort of shit I would have said had I become a politician. I didn't, thank God. But anyway, so these guys, these pros are so intent on winning the next election, they do not have the tenacity, they don't have any desire at all, as far as I can tell, to do what I have a feeling y'all would do, which is make the arguments we've been making and you've been making in your heads and when you talk to each other and at the board meetings and stuff, and lose. And then make those arguments next time and lose. But more and more people here, wait a second, if everybody has skin in the game, it's like everybody's kicking in for dinner. We're not going to have Cristal and lobster and stick it with those two people at the end of the table, the bill. We're all going to join it. It's a very simple notion that makes sense to people and they get it. Okay, maybe it takes 2-3 elections. We'll just keep losing them. But we'll keep preaching that. And then, by God, when we finally win something, it will mean something. Mark Stein made a brilliant point, and it may not be original, but he's great, and he's a friend, and we love him. He said the current debate in American politics is between two statist parties arguing over which can run the gigantic government slightly more efficiently than the other one, which is not the argument we need to have. And so the Republican Party, in our humble opinions, as professional politicians, has been tending toward that we got to get this election, we got to get the power. Hell, I'm willing to lose 10 in a row if that 11th election, all the new voters, all the kids who've grown up hearing the truth rise up and say, no, you know what, America as it was in its core principles was incredibly successful. We want that more than we want this.
Yeah, there's obviously that angle of everything. I mean, they spend, feel free to applaud him, it's just,
Rise to your feet, throw roses if you want, it's cool.
Sure. Joe mentioned Mark Stein, who wrote the book America Alone, which is one of the greatest books ever written. I mean, and it's an easy read if you've never read it. You know, get that for somebody for Christmas. It's great.
It's funny too.
But he's got a graph in there where he shows how government has grown. And it doesn't matter if Republicans are in charge or Democrats in charge, it just keeps growing. I mean, so it just keeps going. Do you know the federal government has doubled in size since what year? What do you think, 1901? 1960? No, since 2001. The federal government has doubled in size since 2001.
Did you hear that on the campaign?
Isn't that astounding? And by the way, you had 7 years in there where George Bush was in charge, and a couple of those years, he had the Republican House and the Senate. Did they take on all these entitlements? No. I don't know if anybody actually cares to do anything about this. It drives me crazy that the federal government has doubled in size since 2001. That is astounding. How long do you think you can keep that up before you're actually Greece? Well, we're about to find out, I think, like in months.
Well, and we've got a special front row seat here in California, as well as we all
I
realize.
wish I had more solutions than just pointing out obvious problems. Are you okay, sir? Sue somebody.
The next time we're here, we'll talk about that.
Speaking of, yeah, well, I want to bring that up right now. I'd like to tell the story because there's two parts I was going to say. I knew I was going to say something. There's kind of two angles to this whole kind of socialism taking over thing. There's the money angle, obviously. They spend every cent they get, and then they want more money, and then claim that we can't have teachers or firefighters, they don't get more money. But then there's also the angle, and this is a story I always tell because I like it as an example. I move out into the country, and we got this horse barn, and we think, well, maybe we want to start boarding some horses. Seems like a good idea. I got 21 empty horse stalls. I know some people who want to board horses. They'll give me some money, I'll keep the horse. You know how that works. Turns out, I start talking to some people, and they explain to me on why I can't do that. With all kinds of different rules and regulations, I've got to have handicapped bathrooms available in the horse stalls to be able to board horses. For all the handicapped people who ride horses, I guess. Handicapped bathroom stalls. I need to earthquake retrofit my barn. I don't live somewhere where there's been an earthquake in like 300 years, but you have to do that. There are so many different things I have to do. The amount of liability insurance if somebody falls off and hits their head or something like that. So in other words, two citizens of the United States, somebody has a horse, needs to stay out of the rain. Another citizen has shelter for the horse. They can't get together and make that transaction with all these other different tentacles of the government and lawyers and everything else like that getting in. That's socialism also. That's the inability for free citizens to just do transactions without everybody's hand in it. And it's depressing. That's why I'm here, to depress
Chief Dark Cloud. You know, we do a lot of work with the Pacific Legal Foundation, which is one of the... oh, good. I'm glad you're property rights, free enterprise, etc. One of our good friends, Tim Sandifer from the Pacific Legal Foundation. Oh, you know Tim too. Fantastic, Tim the lawyer. He wrote a book called The Right to Earn a Living, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, it's so good. I love it so much. I read 5 pages. I have to put it down. It's almost sexual. I mean, I have to absorb it and think about it and enjoy the afterglow. It's so full of great wisdom about how far down a particular road we've gotten. Actually, Jack's story is one of the best ones I've ever heard. But the Pacific Legal Foundation spends a great deal of its time fighting against suffocating, gigantic Byzantine regulatory agencies. And boy, a poll I would love to see is to figure out somehow the extent to which most Americans understand how much unelected bureaucrats and the rules they pass affect their lives. For those of you who are not real into politics or governing, I don't blame you. We want to protect the flaming titmouse in California, okay? Or perhaps we just want to protect the environment, Joe. So we pass a law establishing the Bureau of Titmouse Protection. They are granted, and by the way, Obamacare is an enormous 800-pound gorilla example of this, but they are granted the powers to enact such rules and regulations are as necessary to accomplish their mission, which is protecting whatever little beastie or waterway or whatever, you know, their task is.
A whole bunch of unelected people making these decisions.
Well, right, exactly, and I value the environment very much. I would call myself an environmentalist, probably not by the current California political description, but, you know, I have children, I love clean air and fresh water as much as anybody. But, so they're tasked with developing what rules and regulations are necessary to accomplish their purpose. At that point, they are divorced in any meaningful way from the influence of the citizens. They're unelected, you can't fire them. They build a bureaucracy, and their sole purpose in the morning is to grow that bureaucracy and grow their own power. And they have those rules and regulatory powers. Well, how do you enforce a rule? You know, a rule without sanctions, a suggestion. Well, they have rules and regulations so they can fine you. You don't pay the fine, they can jail you. So we have these enormous, literally, tens of millions of people who've been granted the power to create out of thin air rules and regulations for which they can fine or jail you. And they're not answerable to you in any way. So with all due respect, and I mean that usually when people say with all due respect, they don't have any respect at all for what they're talking about. With all due respect to electoral politics, that is this unbelievable threat to economic America that I would guess, if I had to guess, maybe 10% of Americans are dimly aware of it. I mean, am I low on that? Business people? Do you think most people have any idea? No, I really don't think I am. So that's yet another thing for you to be depressed about.
Bunch of millionaires and billionaires complaining about the government.
Listen, and now we can get into psychology. Safety. People want to be safe. And we've gone from a bloody-knuckled, dirty-faced people who explored a wilderness and built this incredible thing. This incredible culture. We've gone from that in many ways to a bunch of, well, I call it a nation of veal calves. It's one of the things we talk about on the show, and especially the kids. I mean, they're so protected, they're so safe, they get trophies for everything. The self-esteem movement, which was one of the great obscenities in American history, they've lost that bloody-knuckled, dirty-faced spirit that made this country so great. And that is going to be a tough nut to crack. My kids don't feel like that, not surprisingly. But that's going to be a tough one. That impulse for safety, we talk about the choking effect of overregulation. And 100% of the time, we get the email saying, you guys want maggots in the meat, and you want drugs that'll kill you and everything. As if there's no middle ground between this Soviet-style, you can't go to the party without the government getting involved, and some sort of frontier, you know, Dodge City in 1840 culture.
If there, you know, we ought to get to our question and answer period, but like to sum up, if there is possible to do this rambling conversation, a kind of theme here, the idea that conservative polls would show conservatism is a lot more popular than it shows up in the polls. I think it needs to be sold better. Now, I don't know, maybe y'all can discuss that in future meetings or figure out a way to do it. I'm amazed at how many people I meet that call themselves liberals who are actually conservatives when I talk to them, because we got a guy on our show, I don't know if you've ever heard Vince talk, he's a liberal. He's proud of being a liberal.
He thinks he is.
He thinks he's a liberal. He's so clearly not a liberal on every issue. It drives him crazy that he works so hard and people that in the neighborhood he lives in don't work at all or getting some of his money. All these things he's a conservative and doesn't know it. I lived in Davis, California for 8-9 years. All my friends were proud liberals. Many of them went to Berkeley. When you talk to them, all the things that they care about with their kids and their raising and this and the freedom, they're clearly conservative. It just hasn't been sold to them properly. So somehow conservative got this label as being it's not cool, it's racist, it's homophobic, it's all these different things that makes it only bad people are into it. And somehow we've got to rebrand it. I don't know if how that happens. I don't know if it's just cyclical or whatever. But there's got to be a way to rebrand conservative. There's a hunger for it out there. And not even a hunger out there. It exists out there. People just it needs to be explained to people, you're actually conservative, by the way.
I think a great leader certainly would help But absent that, it's going to bubble up from us. And just to sum up again, and we might say that for the next 20 minutes. To sum up, because we've thrown a lot of junk at you, a lot of different issues, a lot of subjects that have the commonality of we've got to redefine the language, because the language is wildly inaccurate. We put up with it too long. Pick one. Pick one. Read The Conscience of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater. It's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. That's the right title, right? I'm terrible with titles. And pick one principle. Pick overregulation. Do 10 minutes of research. Go to the Heritage Foundation, something like that, and make that your thing, and hammer people with it wherever you go, till they just can't stand the sight of it. Maybe it's the immigration thing. Maybe it's that 82% statistic, which is astounding. Make that your thing. Everywhere you go, win that one. And if there are enough of us doing that in enough ways, we start to make progress in that 11th election that we were talking about, which is a lot of patience, I know, but we'll get that one. Boy, I tell you what, my daughter, my 20-year-old daughter, is left at Trotsky. I mean, God, she's such a flaming liberal. Some of it's the social issue stuff, which we could talk about on another occasion. Because if you ask a college girl about some of the social issues, they're way left. But in terms of economic freedom, it took like 2 minutes to turn her. 2 minutes of simple logic. So, yeah, these are discouraging times. But we're right, no pun intended. If we can fix the language and help people understand what they already believe in their hearts, it's not impossible.